Graham know. And
You are now live.
okay, we are now live. We got it.
Zoomed in the last meeting I was in, so I don't know if you will.
Yeah, well, usually we zoom in here, so they will let me in. But I am trying to remember the protocol. We haven't done a face-to-face in so
Well, we did
long.
H.510.
That wasn't exactly according to protocol.
Well, the only thing that was different is that we hosted it,
That's
says you.
right. So we are
That was
hosting.
protocol.
And I guess then we tell you what we did to your bill? Is that, or do
Well,
you tell us?
I don't think there's a set way to do it. What sometimes we do is have staff go through it side by side rather than.
And right now we don't
Because there's
have,
so many moving pieces here
Yeah.
that probably is the easiest way of.
well, right now we don't have staff. They may show up.
Abby's not available.
I don't know.
They have been sent an appointment. They've said yes, and I've just sent them another note. I don't know why they're not with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we thought.
Let's see if he's on here or.
Here's Graham.
Graham is here.
Okay.
Okay. So Graham, are you, there you are. Graham, can you walk us through the financial parts of both of these bills?
I can. I think it's all financial parts, so I'm just
Yeah, I
wondering
think
whether
it
it makes.
is.
I'm wondering whether it makes sense to have.
Around the finances, but,
Should
okay.
does it make sense for Abby to briefly walk the committee through the bill, and then I can touch on the fiscal?
Abby is here now. Okay, Abby, can you walk us through the bills and then we'll get the finances and we've got 25 minutes at this point.
Sure,
So-
absolutely.
Okay, good, thank you.
So for the record, Abby Shepherd, Office of Legislative Counsel. Do you have the side-by-side summary in front of you? Would
Yes.
you like to start with that? I'm not, just based on how I did the walkthrough for S53, I was maybe a little long-winded. So I don't know if there's a way you'd like me to do it that maybe as I go each section, I'll say what the Senate did. Would that make more sense? I don't want to use up too much of your time.
Okay, yeah, I think probably,
The difficulty is that there aren't easy comparables, so
right.
we'll adapt to whatever it is you do, I think.
But just, I don't think you have to go into the fine details, just
Okay.
what's in.
Also, I'll start with the House version as that's a little less lengthy than what was proposed in the Senate. So the House version proposed creating a new Vermont child tax credit that would be $1,200 per child, and it is based off of some different federal definitions of what a qualifying child is. It would be available both to residents and part-year residents of Vermont who are entitled to the federal child tax credit, and a part-year residence credit would be prorated based on their Vermont income. The credit would be refundable, which means it would be in addition to any tax liability. So it would be the $1,200 for children who are 6 years of age or younger. However, there was a phase out. So not every single taxpayer would receive the full $1,200. It would be phased out based on the taxpayer's income, and the phase out threshold in the House version was set at adjusted gross income over $200,000. And that was both for single filers and joint filers. And the phase out amount was $50 for every $100 of adjusted gross income. In the House passed version, I'm sorry, is there a question?
No, it's 1,000, not 100. The adjustment is for 1,000, at least that's what our sheet says.
Did I say 100? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It is
yeah.
1,000.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's for every $1,000 of income, the credit is phased out by $50. In the House passed version of the child tax credit, there is an intent section that clarifies that receiving the child tax credit is not intended to impact eligibility determinations for benefit programs, including CCFAP, Reach Up, SNAP, or Three Squares Vermont, and several other benefit programs, some of which are federally funded. There is also another subsection that's added in section 2 of the House bill, which would not have taken effect immediately. It would have taken effect 1 year later, and that section would require the Commissioner of Taxes to pay half of the credit upfront in September for eligible taxpayers, unless a taxpayer elected not to receive the payment. So the way that the first year of the credit would have worked is that next year, for tax year 22, when individuals are filing in 2023, they would receive one lump sum for the credit in whatever amount they are eligible for, and then an advance payment of half of the following tax year's credit would be received in September. So that's why it's split up into 2 separate sections, because the effective date section makes them effective at different times. Section 3 of the House bill included a statutory purpose, because tax expenditures under Vermont statute are required to have an intent section, and the intent is to provide financial support to families with young children. Section 4 of the House passed version required a report on creating monthly child tax payments, child tax credit payments, and that was in keeping with the recent COVID time child tax credit payments made at the federal level. Those were made monthly. So the intent was to look at making monthly payments in Vermont in a way that would not impact benefit programs. So this, the House passed version required the Commissioner of Taxes, the Commissioner for Children and Families together to report to the House Committees on Human Services and Ways and Means and Senate Committees on Finance and Health and Welfare next January, recommending a way to structure a monthly child tax credit payment that would not impact benefit programs, as well as ways to administer it by the Department of Taxes. So other than the effective date sections, which I just mentioned, they are slightly different because the first year would be a lump sum, and going forward, there would be one advance payment. That is the extent of the child tax credit proposals from the House. The other portion of the Vermont of the House passed version was to change the Vermont Social Security income exclusion. So that is existing statute. There are already income thresholds that apply to Social Security income that's received by Vermont taxpayers. It currently is set at different thresholds for single filers versus for joint filers. And the House proposal increased the income thresholds by $5,000. So it would be a slightly more generous benefit for Vermont taxpayers who receive Social Security income. And that is the extent of the House version. If there are any questions, otherwise I could explain what the Senate did, which is has more proposals in it.
I'm not seeing any questions. I think we can move to the Senate.
So the Senate did also include a Vermont child tax credit. It's a refundable credit. It is, the structure of it is slightly different. So instead of a $1,200 credit, it would be a $1,000 refundable credit. The age limit is decreased. So instead of children 6 years and under, it would be children 5 years of age and younger. The phase out is also changed. So it would be for adjusted gross income of either single or joint filers of $55,000 of AGI. That's the threshold. That's where the phase out begins. And the phase out is $125 for each $10,000 of adjusted gross income. The other change that was made is to require taxpayers.
Question, Abby.
Yes, I'm sorry.
This is like, when you post prices on the grocery store shelf, like phase outs are in different units. Can somebody put them in the same unit for me?
Yes, so it could also be $12.50 for
That's what I need to
1,000.
see. And I misunderstood that in an earlier conversation, and that's why the Senate is a longer phase out, because it's $12.50, so the increment's littler. So it would be easier on whatever sheet we end up with if those are in the same.
I just like chart. Shows.
The way the chart.
The line chart, that's been helpful.
You
but-
have the line chart.
I was gonna do it, I was the zeros wrong, so 12.50 out of,
Out of 1,000.
10,000.
thank you.
Yes, I believe Graham has some useful charts to show the slopes of the phase out.
I can picture it when it was described to me as 12.50 for every 10,000, and that, no, I'm sorry, the other way around.
It'd be 12.50 per
1,000 is what I was told, and I was thinking that's a much steeper phase out. I get that this is more gradual. Okay, thanks.
Okay, we can keep going.
There is one other, there is a new subdivision or subsection that is added in the Senate version, which is to require taxpayers who are not otherwise required to file a tax return to use to claim the credit in the form and manner prescribed by the Commissioner of Taxes, provided that it is simple and easy to understand. So that gets at taxpayers who would otherwise be eligible, but are not necessarily required to file.
Another question on the phase out, the AGI, is that it doesn't specify whether that is the same income for both single and joint filers. It just refers to
It is
taxpayers.
household.
It is the same.
Okay.
Same as your construct.
Okay.
It is
Another-
identical to the house construct.
And
That's
on the
correct.
short form that we just did, we have noted that the tax commissioner has concerns. And we told him we do it in
Has concerns about the Medicaid.
no, about the having to file. It was the last thing Abby did, said that
Oh, okay.
you're gonna have to file a tax return
Yeah.
in order to get the credit. The
Yeah.
commissioner had concerns. It was 2 minutes before we voted it out about a short form.
Yeah.
So we said we talk about it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then another
Makes sense.
question, on the side by side, the house side says by the close of the calendar year. Is it the same for your version?
Yes. That language is the
We
same.
protected all the federal programs and so on. It doesn't
Listen,
show
the
on
only
here.
one that might get hit is SNAP, and if we put it.
Yeah.
It,
Same problem we had.
We added Medicaid on advice of somebody to that list.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. That's what the Medicaid thing is for. Okay.
That's correct. And the language that came out of the House was not exhaustive, but the recommendation was include that one's chapter reference just to make it clear. Shall I continue?
yeah, I think so.
One part of the House, or two parts of the House proposal that were removed in the Senate proposal was making the September advance monthly payment. That is not included in the Senate proposal. And the report on monthly payments is also not in the Senate proposal. So that was required by the Commissioner of Taxes and Commissioner of DCF.
So the thought is that this would always be an annual payment. Is that?
I think we got that from DCF, and they said the more we spaced it out, the more it was likely to impact. If we did it once a year, we had 1 month and they could go for a abatement, but if
We heard the same testimony. We thought 2 was safe, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand that we can talk about it, but yeah, okay. We had the same concern, which is why we ended up with 2.
Okay. We can keep going, Abby.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate getting the verbal confirmation. It's hard to.
One more question.
Is the statutory purpose for the child tax credit the same one that we had?
Yes, it is. It is just moved into a different section of the bill.
Okay, think is that we can keep going.
Okay. So this is where just the structures of the bills of the two proposals are a little different. So if you are following on the side by side, I will just read from the Senate amendment column. So in section 2 of the Senate proposal of amendment, there are changes made to the existing child and dependent care tax credits. There are currently 2. One is for 24% of the federal credit. One is for 50%. This language strikes the 24% and increases the 50% to 100% and makes it available without an income limit. The next proposal is to create a student loan interest deduction in Vermont. There's currently a
We have
federal.
question, Abby.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Abby, the child independent care tax credit, I know sort of the specifications for about sort of center care and licensed care, but is sort of a salary to a nanny eligible for that?
Because it is based on the federal child independent care credit, yes, it would be. So under current statute, and that is actually struck in the Senate proposal of amendment, it is limited to services provided in a registered home or licensed facility certified by AHS. That language is removed, so it's purely following the federal credit, which the restrictions are for care being provided to allow the taxpayer to work or to seek work. So payments made to a nanny would essentially qualify, as would summer camp, after school.
Summer camp and after school count within.
Yeah.
So
elder parents. Yes.
So Abby, I think you said that it's available without regard to income. Maybe that's not what you said, but I just want to be clear in my own head. This is 100% of the federal credit, and the federal credit is limited by income.
Yes. So the Vermont low income child and dependent care credit is currently 50% of the federal, and that has income thresholds. Those Vermont specific income thresholds are repealed. That's what I was referring to and saying without regard to income, but you're correct. There are still federal income requirements, and those would still flow through to Vermont.
And what are those?
Those, I actually don't know off the top of my head.
Is it on maybe in the fiscal notes?
It might be. Graham might have that. Sorry, Graham.
Sorry, just to chime in, there are income limits to the federal child dependent care credit, but it doesn't go away ever. It's just that the size of the credit that you can earn is smaller depending upon your income. So I believe it's something like up to once you make over 40,000 or so, the percentage of the credit or the percentage of your eligible expenses that are eligible for the credit are, I think, made to about 20%, whereas at the beginning it's about 35.
Well, I don't know much about it, so I'll have to admit that I'm confused by it. Because it talks about the low income child dependent care credit and that's the reference to the Vermont statute. Okay, I'll learn more. All right.
Yeah, so it's, what the Senate proposal amendment does is it removes the 24% because there are currently 2 under Vermont statute. It removes the 24% and expands the 50 to 100%, and it takes away those Vermont specific income thresholds.
That's in Vermont.
The next proposal in the Senate amendment is creating a Vermont student loan interest deduction. And that would allow qualified taxpayers to deduct all of the interest paid on qualified education loans for cost of attendance at a higher educational institution. That does impose income limits. So if a taxpayer is filing with a single status, they must be making $120,000 of AGI or less. And if they are married filing jointly, the income threshold is $200,000 of AGI. Then there is a section in the bill, section 5, in the amendment, that creates the statutory purposes. It amends those for both the child tax credit, the child care and dependent credit, and the new student loan interest deduction. Sections 6 through 10 sunset all of these changes. So to the child tax credit, to the child care and dependent care credit, and to the student loan interest deduction, it repeals all of the changes that are made in the proposal in 3 years. So that would mean that the child tax credit and those other credits and deductions would only be available for 3 years. The next two sections, sections 11 and 12 of the Senate proposal of amendment, create retirement income exemptions. And some of the members of the committee will be familiar with these from seeing them in the proposal in S53. In fact, what is in this proposal is part of what was in S53 and part of what the House proposed in H.510. So it increases the thresholds for the Social Security income exemption by $5,000. And then it also creates new retirement income exemptions for civil service retirement system recipients, other government retirement system recipients where they could not contribute to Social Security, and US military retirees. And those three are subject to, it's only the first $10,000 of retirement income that can be exempted. And they are subject to an election. When they're eligible for Social Security, those retirees have to choose between the $10,000 exemption or their Social Security benefits exemption. One point I wanted to make is that just comparing this to S53 is that this language does not have an exemption for survivors. So, because that was in a different part of statute. I don't know if there are any questions there.
So we won't do it right now, but I need more information on how this actually works. And just all I know is that it's several types of retirement income treated similarly, but I don't understand the mechanics of
and
the election and so on. I've
I
heard
think
it,
we're
don't get it.
taking this on faith from Graham. And what he did was he took, and Graham, you can probably explain this better than I can. He took, our goal was to have all retirement income get essentially the same exemption. And so Graham did some mathematical magic, and these are the numbers he came up with so that everybody gets essentially the same benefit, which was somewhere around $250 in tax savings, taxes you don't spend or you don't have. And yeah.
So and then we increased it as you had, I think,
Right.
was it in here or S53?
It's in here now.
But basically, if you don't collect Social Security because you're, on a federal, on the civil servant, you never paid Social Security, you get a pension, and that pension, and you includes some portion that recognizes you're not eligible for Social Security. So we tried to make it as if they had been collecting Social Security and they therefore got the same benefit that we give as a state to Social Security recipients. And then we pushed the military pension through that same sort of setup.
The goal was to treat everyone equally and to focus, again, more on the moderate and lower income. The lower income are pretty much excluded now, more on the moderate income. And then when you turn 65, because the military especially can start collecting at 40 or 45, somewhere in there. If you do, then when you, or civils, you know, if you get to the point where you also get Social Security, you have to choose. Do I get the deduction so that nobody gets double?
When you tried to match up with the way Social Security was treated before Social Security age, did you try to include the 15% sort of federal exemption that kind of flows?
I'm gonna cede to Graham on that.
I think Senator Cummings is describing it correctly. So basically, the goal was the committee looked at, you know, what is the average tax benefit of the current Vermont Social Security, the Vermont tax benefit. So that's after the 15% federal exemption. After all that comes into play, the average benefit was about $250 per Vermont taxpayer who received the exemption. And so the goal with these retirement exemptions was to create a level where the beneficiaries of these tax exemptions would receive what I estimated to be around $250 of total Vermont tax benefit. And so that's why you get about $10,000 for both CSRS annuitants and military retirees.
I don't know. I'm not sure what it is I don't understand about it, but there's something I don't understand.
Okay.
So military retirement, for example, can happen at 45, whatever, age 45. And military retirees are eligible for Social Security, right?
There
When they
are
turn,
some older ones.
They pay in. And
Yes, they
get
do,
it when they're the right age.
and
Yeah, so what if
civil
you-
service started in 87.
So what if you're a state trooper and you retire at 55 and you paid into Social Security and you're getting your retirement? Are they going to be treated now differently from military retirees?
Yes,
Yes,
they'll get Social Security though.
But so do military retirees. What? Not at 55, they won't. I'm just trying to think
Yeah,
about sort
no,
of what's this
it's-
group that looks all the same,
yeah,
but they're actually not. They're not. There are other people
Maybe,
yes,
who are
there
going to
are.
be different, right?
Yes, there are.
maybe we could describe it as, if you're getting a tax exemption in this universe, we're trying to give you all one.
But you're
One
trying to give you
contract.
this
There's
same.
still a ton of people that don't get this, but if you're getting it, we're trying to say, here's what you get. And it's consistent and it caps out based on your income and all that.
I get what I think I'm struggling with, and I'm genuinely struggling with it because I don't totally understand it, is sort of what's the principle here.
You said it. I mean, so we had under a lot of pressure to exempt military pensions.
Yeah.
And I think we all respect the military and what they've done. But we are not exempting the pensions for teachers or firefighters or state troopers. No, it is not completely equitable.
So granted, and we sent you a straight 10,000, which we thought was still think it was a reasonable approach because it's basically progressive. $10,000 is worth a whole lot more to somebody with lower retirement amounts and so on. We weren't trying to make it like anything else. That's the part I'm having trouble with. We thought it was the right thing to do, still do, and so I'm struggling sort of putting that into a box labeled principle.
That's the other thing we did. We set the same income caps.
Yes.
So if you are a retired general who's been consulting with the military industrial complex, and you're comfortably retiring here on $1 million a year, you're not going to get any exemption. We've got the same caps.
And we felt we did that by making it a flat exemption. So your retired general at $1 million a year is going to get an exemption that's so tiny it's not going to have any impact, basically.
Yes,
So
and
we just had a different approach, and I'm just trying to understand what's behind the different approaches.
Could I ask,
yes.
I think, I wonder if this is a little bit like you were asking our scale of measuring, because you've talked about 10,000.
Right.
Our language, I think, and I looked to Abby and Graham, talks about what it means off of your tax bill, but I have a feeling we built ours off of 10,000 worth
Yeah,
of.
that's,
So I wonder if staff
okay.
could help us
Helpful to know.
understand.
Yeah.
Are we both talking about 10,000, or is that the net effect? Or, maybe we're just talking about the same thing in different metrics.
and I think the reason it is not for everyone is that we were told point blank that federal law says that we can't exempt state pensions unless we exempt a federal pension.
Mhm.
However, we can exempt a federal pension.
Without doing the statewide, well, that's.
Yeah, which is why your troopers and your teachers and everybody else are not included. And we also found out that the military do not contribute to their pension, unlike all other pensions that we know of.
And I will say the reason we put the 10,000 in is because we've been getting a lot of pressure to exempt military retirement entirely. We didn't
Yes.
think that was the right path to go down. We did think that the 10,000 was appropriate, it's progressive, it's a relatively small impact, and that's where we ended up. And I continue to think it's the right place to end up, but I'm trying to understand what you all did.
And maybe I'm watching the
Yes, I'm
clock, you're
sorry.
on the floor.
Of course, we're talking about the hardest part of this.
I like to
Yeah.
feed my people
Yep.
before committee. So maybe if we can run through the last
sorry.
few, and
Yep.
then you can
Yep,
sit
yep.
down with Graham and see if you
Do you think
can.
I can wrap my head around it?
Yes.
Do you think I can do it?
It
The
takes,
utmost confidence.
and I'm hopeful I can remember where my head was.
And I'm sorry, one more question. Is it that you then, once you get to social security, you have to choose between one exemption or the other?
Right,
For military.
Right.
no double dipping. Okay, Abby,
Okay, the next.
our
Oh, sorry.
addition.
Yes, so the next section's moving on from the retirement income exclusions. The next three sections are quite different. The section 13 in the Senate proposal of amendment relates to the affordable housing tax credit and manufactured homes. So it increases the amount of the first year tax credits by $250,000 a year. And that new amount is dedicated to manufactured home purchase and replacement. If this sounds familiar to some of you, it was passed out of the House in H.510 last session.
But at a lower figure, right, at 125?
It was identical.
It was
This is the same.
I think we sent it twice, actually.
That's very possible.
All right,
That's why
That's
we were.
like, yes, I think that's correct.
and
But
I,
it's not alive anywhere else but this spot.
it is,
So the way to convince you is send something over twice.
there's a lot of that going on. Appropriations and a couple.
But it's not anywhere else now. This is the only spot where it's.
I believe that's true, but
But Senator Sorokin marches to his own drummer, so
Indeed.
I would not guarantee that.
And he has a lot of drums.
He has a lot of drums. But our intent was, we put it in here just because it's been hanging out there and people like it.
and to just do it once.
Okay, so that gets us on to 14.
Yes, section 14 is an appropriation for a program for the aid for the aged, blind, and disabled. And it's a fiscal 23 appropriation of 1.7 million to fund the global commitment investment. And that is being appropriated to the Secretary's Office of AHS. So it is a match. It is 750,000 from the general fund and 950,000 from federal funds. There is intent language. It is not binding. It is just intent language to continue to fund this program's annual budget going forward at this amount. Section 15 is an appropriation for the Child Care Worker Retention Grant Program, which was created earlier this year. It's a fiscal year 23 appropriation of $3.5 million from the general fund to the Department for Children and Families to fund that program. And then the effective dates are updated, notably that does include the sunset of the credits and the deduction in 3 years' time. And then the bill title is amended to reflect the contents. It would be called an act relating to tax reductions and other aid to Vermonters, because it does have 2 appropriations in it.
I'm trying to think why, are these appropriations in the budget? Do we know, because we were given a box.
We were given a box.
And
it
we did not
include
spend
appropriations.
$5 million, and we originally had said we won't spend the $5 million, and we were looking at childcare worker credits. All right, and then we were trying to do something for the poorest of the poor. The veterans you see on the Wounded Warriors that aren't getting a pension but are probably on SSI. And we were trying to get money down there, and I think this got about $10 a month, which was, if we get any higher, they lose their 3 squares. So, but I'm not sure if this is, if it's appropriated here or if it made it into the budget.
So my understanding is that the box we were given, we were not expected to do appropriations out of it. That was my
Right, and we
understanding.
were
So,
going to
wherever
send
they
this
went.
back to them and
I'm
shrink the
not
box.
sure this single piece is in the budget. I think there is a separate tracking document that tracks an amount for this. And I think if the decision is made here, this would go in the budget.
So I'm more worried not so much about the vehicle, but the dollar amount.
Yeah,
We were told we could spend, if you
Yes.
will,
Okay.
X dollars, and we were told that we were not expected to appropriate money out of that.
all right, we were not told about not appropriating. I think we've got 2 different boxes. We were given a box so that we could finish up our tax credit bill, which was 40 million.
Yes.
Right.
And the budget is built upon that as a compromise number.
And we only spent 36, so we said, we gave you 4 million back, this is how we'd like you to spend it. And
Right.
I'm not sure what happened to
From
that.
where we're sitting, what I understood from those discussions is that this bill could spend as tax expenditures 40 million.
Right.
And we were not expected to appropriate money for whatever these.
Right.
If we chose to, we could, but we're not expected to.
Right, no, this bill we're working on, this conference, we've been given the $40 million box. Technically, we did $36 million in tax credits, and you did
We did
48 or
No, we have 50.
you did 50. And I guess that's what we need to know, Graham, for the next time is how much did we end up appropriating for all the retirement credits? If that's getting
Yeah,
counted.
this little sheet is very
It's
helpful.
it's helpful. All right. And then,
So. Okay, I think we're saying slightly different things, I just want to say it again. The appropriation, my understanding when we created the $40 million box is that we were not going to appropriate money in this bill.
Right.
If we ended up not doing tax credits, the money would fall to the bottom line, but we were not going to appropriate money. That's important to
Okay.
us because at 40 million, we're significantly below where we started.
Could I understand? So if we wanted, let's say we stuck with the Senate construct of 4.25 million appropriation. Are you saying that we are not permitted to go and have that be stuck in the budget and then bring our 40 down to 35.75?
Saying something slightly different, and
I think we need to clear it up.
that what I'm saying is that if we did, no, say to me, What was the first thing you said? If we,
Well, if we're, I mean, you seem to be delineating between a bill that costs $40 million and a bill that costs 36 million and spends 4 million.
so the 36 means nothing to me because we're at 50. So what my understanding was that the tax reductions that we do in 510, we have $40 million worth of tax
Okay.
reductions.
in this committee.
And in this group, and the conversations that we had leading up to this was that we were not expected to appropriate, that if there was a need for appropriating money, that was gonna happen in the budget over and above the 40 million. So if we decided we wanted to do the 4.5, we'd be at 44.5.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's a
Okay,
dollar.
maybe-
It makes sense from what we said.
Okay, yeah, because we're either even or we've got money on the table. You've got to come down. So if we don't
to 40.
do the 4 million,
Yeah.
then, because we spent.
We
Well,
I understand all that.
15.
Okay, we need to clear it up then with appropriations and the
I
status.
will see where it's tracked.
Yeah,
I don't think that, that spending is in the budget.
okay.
Right.
So I think, but I will check and make sure where the tracking documents have it.
Right, because the 40 million is, I was told the speaker and the pro tem have agreed that this is what we've got.
But-
And I don't know
What we got from our side is that we were not expected to, if there was a need for appropriating money, it was not gonna come out of the 40 million. So
Okay,
that means we're at 44.5 or,
Well, but we don't have 40. This is strange. So the way you're describing it removes the option for us to spend, to go with these two lines. And I
That's
don't
right.
understand what is the
that
difference?
was the agreement
Between whom? I would,
between the speaker and the pro tem.
okay.
okay, but
that was not
weren't they really agreeing to 40 million?
No, they were agreeing, there were three pieces, frankly, and I haven't talked about the third one, but I will. There was.
Graham's got his hand up, so maybe he can help us.
There were three pieces, 40 million, no appropriations, and no sunset. And we haven't talked about the sunset.
Oh, well, no one's told us that, so maybe we need to talk
Sure.
to the pro tem's office.
Okay.
Because that changes, that is not something we have agreed on. So Graham,
So maybe this will clarify, you all have 40 million to do everything in this bill. Your box is 40 million, and the 40 million, if you want to do these appropriations, comes out of the 40 million.
Graham, that's
So-
not correct. I'm sorry, you were not at the meeting. We could appropriate 40 million. We could do no tax cuts and leave 40 million on the bottom line. But the agreement was that we would be at 40 million and
Well,
it did not include.
then we need to check with our leadership because we were not invited to the meeting and no one told us these agreements. So with that, I think
We have some more conversation.
we are going to go find out what the rules are.
Yeah.
And
That's
I
good.
don't, we're back on the floor at 4. I'm going to, Faith is on, ask her to notify my committee that we're not gonna meet until 2. We're supposed to be meeting at 1:30, but I want people to be able to eat and maybe meet with the pro tem.
That's it.
We've only got, I think, one bill. But it will be a painful bill.
Which one's it?
Rygate,
Senator Cummings, would you like to end live stream now?
yes, and live stream, I think we're done.